So interestingly enough, like you said that this song inspired you and you wrote it in record time. What exactly was that record time?
About 5 minutes.
Interesting. So you're telling me that you wrote a hit song in 5 minutes. Okay. Well, how the whole thing kind of happened.
Well, as I was saying to my manager, Dave, I was like, really? We'll start off with Footprints? Well, that one has kind of the least interesting story. But as I was going into it, he's like, well, actually, that's pretty interesting. He said, maybe we should be calling it the How to Write a Song in 5 Minutes. So it actually relates to how all of the other pieces come in, because Footprints was actually, even though it's the title track to the album, was actually the last song that I wrote, actually, while I was recording the rest of the songs for the album. Funny enough, it got thrown into the mix, and I created it while I was actually working on just doing demos for the other songs. And we just were sitting down figuring chords out, and somehow in the discussion it came up about at my wedding, and how the lady that wrote the poem Footprint in the Sand was actually, her daughter was the ventriloquist at my wedding that my mom had hired. So we had a family connection there, and I just noticed every time we went downtown, I'd see paw prints in your heart or different things in reference to the poem, but not really the poem. And it got me to thinking about, as I was developing these songs, how all the things that people do leave that footprint in your song, because you're writing about these incidences that happened in life, and then a song gets developed around them. So really they're leaving a footprint in your song, because that is what ends up being right into your music. So that was how the idea was born, and basically I just had written down very quickly when the idea hit. I just kind of started writing it out, and it just flowed and worked. So I had the basics to the song, because I'm just sort of like a lot of songwriters where inspiration hits and I just scribble down in a book, and the next thing you know, I've kind of got a song down. So that one, it starts as sometimes when you first meet, you know right from the start that the persons will leave footprints in your heart. You can travel with them to beaches and other lands, and and before the tide comes in, our footprints in the sand. And that was just kind of thinking about it in a relationship when you're with somebody and you're doing things that all the little incidences in life, and how you're putting them into the song, and before they get washed away, that you left that mark on a person. So before they kind of pass on, I guess, in life, or you move on to different things in life, that mark, there's a footprint in the sand before it gets to move on to something new. Okay.
Let's now talk about how more the recording process went into place, and how that bit of it happened. Because obviously, like, the whole thing wasn't recorded in one shot, was it? Or was it like done in the same sort of sessions where you recorded the rest of the album?
Well, because this was all the work up on the demos before I went to studio. Because you have to do a demo process first, and kind of map out where your songs are going and some chord structure and things, and before you give it to the other session musicians, because then they listen to the demo and then they get an idea, and then they kind of just play the song from there. So you have a guy that charts out how the chords and the structures, because you do a lot of workarounds with the song. So the first part of the song and the words come really fast. It's the polishing of the turd, shall we say, after the fact. that takes the reworkings. I would say Footprints probably had the most reworkings of it. So even though I wrote it in 5 minutes, the words in the general.
So you had the lyrics down in 5 minutes, the melody and everything else, that kind of came after the fact.
Well, because I usually have the tunes a little bit in my head, so I'd say the tune and the general structure of it was done mostly in about the 5 minutes, 10-minute thing. And since the guy was there, I just kind of wrote it on the spot. Then when I was doing the remake of it, so I had most of it written. Then I was going over it with one of the other session players, and he was like, there should maybe be a little breakdown somewhere in it. Can we do something a little bit different in there? But you'll need some words. So I said, okay, well, just hand me that pad and paper. And I basically just scripted out the little breakdown piece because I just thought about it for 2 seconds and then just wrote it down and just went, and then I passed it over to him and he's like, really? Really? And I was like, yeah, I know. I just, kind of find it that easy.
Well, just like yourself, session musicians are also very extraordinary people. They only need to listen to something a few times, maybe even once, and then their brains also start kind of spinning, the wheels start working, and then next thing you know, they're constructing an entire rhythm for you and foundation.
Yeah, they're riffing off and doing things, and it's great. I love and respect all my session musicians. They're just fabulous. But yeah, it's just the breakdown part, because we did because I was thinking about just the mishaps that come along in life, and those are some of the best parts that you're writing about and that are leaving those marks on your life. So that's why it's a step to the left. I took a step to the left, you took a step to the right, but after all the steps that came along, you left a footprint in my song. And that's basically where that idea came from, was that all these little mishaps in life, and they just add to that imprint in your song.
Excellent.
Sometimes when you first meet, you know right from the start that the person will leave footprints in your heart. You can travel with them to beaches in other lands, and before the tide comes in, footprints in the sand. You were my inspiration each time you came along. You were the only one to leave a footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. You were the only one to leave a footprint in my song. You can travel side by side down that open road, and somewhere in the travels, footprints in your soul. But each time that we met, there was a certain melody. Our hearts beat together, creating harmony. You were my inspiration each time you came along. You were the only one to leave a footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. You were the only one to leave a footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. You were the only one to leave a footprint in my song. I took a step to the left, you took a step to the right. But for all the missteps that came along, you left a footprint in the song. I took a step to the left, you took a step to the right. But for all the missteps that came along, you left a footprint in my song. You were my inspiration each time you came along. You were the only one to leave a footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. You were the only one to leave a footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. Footprint in my song. You were the only one to leave